I always enjoyed the food that I was eating growing up. One of the first salads I put on the Watershed menu when it opened had pickled beets in it. Like right on the menu it read Mom's Pickled Beets. That was a point of story for me behind that salad. Like those are the pickled beets that I grew up eating my entire life. That I'm telling a story at the table to someone. I get to tell my mom's story. It puts a lot of enjoyment in the food. I'm Jack Moore, Executive Chef of Watershed Kitchen and Bar. I started off as an auto mechanic. The company that I worked for did a company-wide layoff. I leave work at 9:30 in the morning because I get laid off, and I'm like, well, I have nothing to do with my day, so I'm going to go to this tailgate party that this bar's having and see what's there. And I walk in, and the first person I see is one of my friends who works at the pizza place attached to the bar. And he's like, "Aren't you supposed to be at work?" "Not anymore. Like, I don't have a job." And he was like, "My delivery driver called off tonight." He's like, "You can deliver pizzas and just make a few extra bucks until you figure out where you're going to go next." It just so happened that the type of pizza place that I got into was a somewhat from scratch pizza place. I wanted to make the dough. I wanted to make the pizza sauce. That kind of put the bug in my ear. I was like, maybe I do enjoy cooking more than I think I do.
A kiss from your lips holds a story.
Food was always a big part of my life, but it was always very simple. And I loved cooking growing up, but my idea of cooking growing up was on the side of the hamburger helper box, there's like, add green peppers to make it zesty. And I came from a family that coming out to eat was going to diners or, the Travel Center of America. Like that was our fancy restaurant. I grew up my entire life like that, not really knowing the possibilities of food. I remember very specific things in my childhood, like apple butter and jelly from the wild berry patches, or green beans from the garden. So went to culinary school. I learned a lot of product knowledge in culinary school. I didn't necessarily learn how to work in a restaurant or run a restaurant or be a chef necessarily, but I learned a lot of product knowledge while I was in culinary school. But even then, it wasn't necessarily right or wrong knowledge. When we got to culinary school, the thought of canned green beans was absolutely wrong. It took me a while to come back to that and really find the love and the nostalgia, I guess, in that being able to take the things from my childhood, like those canned green beans, and find a way to put it on a plate in a manner that when people come into my restaurant and eat that type of food, they recognize it from their childhood. That was something that was really hard for me to kind of come into. It took a long time in my career to come around to realize that it's not about right or wrong food. It's about knowing who you're feeding and what you want to accomplish with it. So I think it's really important that you know where the food comes from, not just geographically, but who's raising the food. There's a lot of farm to table and local movement that's happening right now, and I try not to let that be a point of marketing. To me, like that's common sense on how the restaurant should run. What I want to do with the restaurant, like is supporting the community and supporting the people who's going to support me in return. Like how does buying something that I have no idea where it came from, or if it's just mass produced somewhere, like how does that help those people any at all? If they're local enough that I can have a relationship with them, walk through their garden or walk through their hog farm and see the way that they raise things and be able to tell their story at the table while I'll tell mine, that's important to me. Farmer Joe walks in the back door and his kale is the most beautiful kale I've ever seen, but it's 10 times more expensive than anybody else's. I can still justify buying that because I want to tell his story. I want to support them. I want to tell their story, and I don't expect the small-time farmers to be able to sell me something that is as cheap as the mega producers and purveyors out there. Like, I like to put my money where the story is. So I think that's super important. It's not just about being local. It's about having a relationship